Welcome to Inside the Franchise Growth Engine, presented by Hex Growth, a firm focused on building predictable pipelines, scalable growth systems, and enterprise value for emerging franchise brands. These are real stories from real operators, founders, and growth leaders, but we go deeper. Inside the Franchise Growth Engine, leaders unpack the systems, decisions, and leadership philosophies that turn growth into enterprise value. On today's podcast is a good friend of mine, Jereme Shelton. We used to work together. Jereme has spent more than 15 years helping franchise brands grow and helping entrepreneurs navigate the journey into franchise ownership. He's known throughout franchising for his people-first approach to franchise development and his belief that great franchise systems are built on trust, relationships, and genuine human connection. I can tell you firsthand, I've seen all three of those things from him. What makes this conversation interesting is that franchise development is often viewed as a sales process. Jereme sees it very differently. He believes franchise development is fundamentally about helping people make one of the most important decisions of their professional life. Today, we're going to unpack what that means and how great franchise brands build trust throughout the candidate journey. Jereme, my friend, brother, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Don. That was very well done. I'm impressed.
That was great, Don. All right, Jereme. So give us a brief overview of your background and what led you into franchise development.
Yeah, so my background, I've been in franchising for right around 20 years. I hate to admit it, but I'm getting old. So it's inevitable. What brought me into franchise development is I was working with a law firm that specialized in kind of creating franchise systems for mom and pop locations, and kind of found myself in a role of developing their go-to-market strategy. So how do they get that first franchisee once they have a franchise system? That led me to one of our clients hiring me away to become their franchise development manager, and really just kind of fell in love with it. The actual getting to speak with the people that are making that decision. And from there, one of the things that I identified early on is that I am not a salesperson. A lot of people try and call franchise development sales and things like that. And to me, there's a very distinct difference between early stage franchise development and kind of the late in the funnel process, which is where I tend to like to live. And it is, as Don highlighted, for me, it's a very people-oriented thing. Is this person right for this system? And things along those lines. It's not, do they have the money? Do they have the means? And so I've really enjoyed in my career being able to continue to develop that skill of being people first. And that's what's really kind of continued the love of it for me.
Jereme and I worked at a different brand together, and I was actually on sales calls or calls with candidates with Jereme where he'd say, you know what, I don't think this is the right brand for you. And to be honest with you, you may want to do a little bit more research on franchising in general, and this was early on, like in my career in franchising, I got the opportunity to work with Jereme, and I thought, wow, this guy's doing the right thing. He's not just trying to sell someone a business. He's actually cares about that they're making the right decision and that they're looking at the right, KPIs to understand how this all works together. Jereme, looking across the last 10 years, how has candidate behavior changed from 10 years ago to today?
Man, 10 years ago, it was very linear in the sense of, it was, I'm researching the brands that I know about. I'm researching whether or not I can afford it. And it was far more transactional a decade ago than it is now. What I've seen the biggest change in candidate behavior is people are really starting to look at what can I do for the brand and what is the brand going to do for me, more so than strictly about money. Obviously, everybody wants to earn more money. That's the only reason that you're thinking about being a business owner. It really comes down to, can I earn more money, which really equates to, can I capitalize on my time better? And that's where I think the greatest shift has come, is people really are valuing their time more so than they were 10 years ago.
Today, compared to 10 years ago, there's more available information. Do you feel like they've always done a lot of research, or do you feel like some of these newer candidates, say within the last few years, especially with AI, are really doing deeper research and understanding because franchising is a business model, right? Really understanding the model.
I think the type of research has changed. I think candidates are doing more research now because they have more information available, but I think what they're researching is different. From my personal perspective, I think when candidates look at franchises today, they want to know who failed and why they failed, more so than how much money is everyone making. Because that's fairly easy to figure out in most franchise systems, is whether or not it's going to earn money or not. But I think they're able to dig deeper now into the failures, or maybe the failures to launch quickly, more so than just failure, and be able to leverage kind of AI insights and things along those lines to hopefully make better early decisions as a franchisee.
Yeah, I agree. And with the shift, it's definitely year over year, franchising grows as a whole, right? There's more people that are looking to exit corporate world and be their own boss, if you will. And I think there's more data now, right? Because there are more franchise businesses that you can do more due diligence on now from years ago. I do like what you said. I do like that you're a, people first, have that type of mentality. Why do you think that some franchise systems struggle to put people ahead of transactions?
That's a hard question. Well, I guess it's not a hard question to answer from my perspective. It really depends on the structure of the franchisor. There are some organizations that are sales first organizations.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the way it's going to be. There are also some brands that have to be that way. I have been very fortunate in my career that I have not worked for many companies that had to be sales first. When you look at retail concepts and things like that in general that need a lot of tickets in order to make it successful, for most people is going to be a sales force organization. And in franchise development, it's going to come down the same way. In my personal opinion.
Many brands, I think, view franchise development primarily as a sales function. Where do you think those brands get it wrong?
I think they're losing sight of what that sale achieves for them and what risk comes with it. When we look at a lot of the systems that have grown super fast, they're going to get it right some of the time, but they're going to get it wrong some of the time. And when you get it wrong in franchise development, it can have a large large effect, a ripple wave, whatever the word is that I'm looking for right now. And that's kind of the risk, is if you're only interested in the sales side of it, not the people, not what those people are going to do for your organization, not really developing whether or not they're the right person, because you can sell fast and sell to the right people. But not doing that research of trying to figure out who your people are before you start selling franchises is going to come back and have some sort of negative reaction down the road.
And when you say your people, you're talking about franchise candidates, like ideal franchise customers.
Yeah. So whether you're utilizing, some sort of personality test, like a Zoracle or somebody else out there that helps you identify like who your typical business owner should be, then by not putting that person first, you're putting more pressure on, your ops teams, your marketing teams, your real estate development. All of that stuff is going to have a little bit of a harder time communicating with that person to begin with. And your customers are going to have that same struggle.
What would you say that you guys do there at ohDEER to build trust with the candidates? And why do you think that, or what do you think one of the fastest way to lose a candidate's trust?
Yeah, we ask a lot of questions, and we let them ask a lot of questions as well. One of the things that has, I'll be honest, frustrated some executives in my career is I like to let the candidates lead the process. We obviously have certain steps that we have to go through. There are certain legal requirements that cannot be avoided no matter what. But my first call doesn't have a pitch deck. I don't kill them with a PowerPoint. I let them speak first for the most part. I obviously introduce myself and say, this is who I am. This is why I'm here. But then I kind of turn it over to them and kind of let them lead the process. Because the reality is, if we're going to build a relationship together, they need to feel just as comfortable as we do. And important part about that is kind of letting them be themselves in that process, to me. Not saying there's not other ways to achieve it. That's just the way that I find it best.
I think it also probably gives you the best view of who they are as real people, right? Like almost like they're not feeling like they're being interviewed, that they're running it. They maybe let their guard down, which then you actually get to maybe see more of their authentic self. You've worked a lot of entrepreneurs at every stage of the discovery process. What do you think separates candidates who ultimately become successful franchisees to the ones that don't?
The easiest answer there is the ones that understand how hard it's going to be up front. Even the best system with the best processes, with the best corporate staff, with the best onboarding, they're still setting up their own business. And whether they've done it once before, 10 times before, every single one is going to come with its own unique struggles. And so being mentally prepared for that, as well as financially prepared for it, I think really sets apart franchisees during the first 6 to 8 months.
Understanding how hard it's going to be, is that doing a lot more validation with existing franchisees? Is it working a day in a life or week in a life before you invest? Like, what does that look like?
I think it comes down to like the very first way that you can engage in that is how you're handling your discovery process. We're very transparent in the fact that we expect people to be owner operators and that will come with a 60 to 80 hour commitment out of the gate. And, we include, hey, you're going to need extra capital just sitting there because being a business owner costs money. And as much as we want to estimate the best that we can for you, we know that somebody's going to ask you for something that we haven't thought about. And it's going to frustrate you and it's going to be difficult for you to process, but it just comes with the territory. And so speaking about things through the discovery process, explaining hardships, being as transparent as possible, and making sure that they understand whatever your specific time commitment is, right? It may not be an owner-operator brand that's going to require 80 hours. It could be, the often called unicorn of a semi-absentee business that's only going to require 20 hours of your time a week. But knowing what that is and being as transparent as possible through the process of that is going to really help set not only you, but your franchisees up for the greatest success in that expectation.
I think that's the hardest part for some people too, right? Is really going through what does it look like? Because there are people that expect to come in, start a business, work little as possible and make as much money as possible. And it's just not, it's just not how it works.
Yeah.
I just lost a candidate this morning over this exact topic.
Yeah.
Great guy, really loves the brand, wanted to be a brand champion for us and all of that, but just wasn't ready to leave his 9 to 5 and just asked a couple too many times, hey, are you sure this isn't possible to do? Like I could commit like 40 hours a week to it. And I'm like, hey, sorry, but you're just not our ideal candidate. And at this point, we've had this discussion a couple times and, so unfortunately we're going to have to exit the process. But, there are a lot of brands out there that could work for him. He has the right mindset as to being a business owner, in general. He just wasn't the greatest fit for us. And I think that's another important kind of people first concept. If it's not right for them, the kind thing that you can do is tell them that it's not right for them.
Jereme, you and I worked at the other brand together and you actually saw me as an operator. And 4 years later, my brick and mortar is running very successfully. But you saw in the early days how much I was there and involved and working. I mean, you have to earn your way out of that. You have to earn your way out of that job as daily operator. But if you have this investment, whether it be $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $1 million, like you owe it to yourself to babysit that until you know that it's starting to run smoothly, right? And so, I think it's such high EQ to say to someone, I hear what you're saying, but you know what? I don't think you're going to be a great fit for us because you're just kicking a future problem down the road.
Yeah, and I've been, blessed is an interesting word to use, but at ohDEER, we deny way more candidates than we move forward.
Yeah, you said
people that have the money, that have the qualifications, that have, all the check boxes, but that just aren't willing to dedicate enough time or, maybe don't have the ability to get licensed, want to hire somebody, things along those lines. But we have a pretty strict set of criteria for the benefit of them. And to me, that's been very refreshing.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's going to be great in the long run too, right? When you look at 10 years down the road and you have a great network of franchisees, um, it creates less of a headache for you, for the franchisors and everything. So yeah, absolutely. And with that being said, what do you think some of the biggest mistakes franchisors make when they're trying to scale their franchise?
Not being patient enough, I think, would be the number one mistake. And, just like we want franchisees to go into situations well capitalized, having enough money, with open eyes, knowing that things are going to suck at times, that it's going to cost more than anyone tells you it's going to. I think not enough people that are looking at becoming franchisors have that mindset of saying, hey, I need more than this development company is telling me I'm going to need. It's going to take longer. I need to be more patient. I need to make sure that I have the runway. And so a lot of people will get into franchising or relationships with FSOs or other things without knowing that they should be more patient. I've done it. I've made mistakes. I've made a large fair. Don and I made a mistake together, right? And it's going to continue to happen. But the more patient that you are, especially early stage of figuring out who the right candidate is, what the right timeline is, things like that, you're going to set yourself up for better success down the road. And so, yeah, that would be my number one answer is they're just not patient enough.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
I think also too, Jereme, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I also think as I talk to more brands and talk to more CEOs, Monica and I have through this process of doing these podcasts, that I think leadership teams need to have some leadership teams need to have a higher awareness of what they're good at and what they're not good at, right? Like, for example, major respect to Colleen and her team at ohDEER. I think the world of them. They recognized they didn't have sort of that sales expertise on their team, and they went out and sought you and recruited you and got you to come on board. As we talked, Monica and I talked to more CEOs, we're seeing a lot of ops CEOs that don't understand sales or sales CEOs that don't understand ops. And that's where I think you got to take a step back and really invest the money in bringing that been there, done that kind of experience on your team, because you need a well-rounded leadership team, senior leadership team, I think, to grow the right way. Otherwise, if you're just too ops heavy, you're too sales heavy, it's too lopsided the way you grow, and it can actually cause certain deficits. And I don't mean financial, but it generally gets to financial deficits for how the business grows, because they don't have a well-rounded team.
100%. And it's actually one of the reasons that I am excited that the fractional space in franchising is growing, which seems very contrary to a lot of my thoughts on some of the FSOs and stuff. But being able to bring in like a fractional franchise development person early stage, not having to have senior leadership, things along those lines, but having that ability to, to connect with somebody that's worked with a lot of different brands. Because a lot of the founders out there know what they do very well, but they don't know franchising yet. And that's where I think a lot of kind of early stage mistakes can be made, is just not knowing the sandbox that you're playing in yet. And so I've actually been really excited to see some of these fractional companies really start to expand, whether it's CMOs, CDOs, things along those lines. It's been refreshing to offer that as a resource to people.
Yeah, I mean, in different industries, like, for example, Silicon Valley, technology, fractional everything is the way of life, right? Because early stage company doesn't have enough money to maybe pay them full time. And you should be smart enough as a CEO or a leadership team to say, hey, we're ops heavy. We need someone to come in the room and ask the hard hitting go-to-market related questions, the sales questions that we don't think about, in order to balance our approach and make sure that we're a well-rounded sales team. But that takes courage. That takes putting your ego aside, and sometimes that's hard for people. We're seeing more technology and automation enter the franchise sales process. Jereme, how do brands balance that efficiency and what you call it, which is important to you, while maintaining that human connection through the sales process?
Yeah, so I don't think technology necessarily removes a personal connection. when it's done to assist, not to replace. And so we use a lot of different kind of, AI tools and things like that at ohDEER. I have a subscription to all the fun tools, but it's still being trained on who I am and what I would say and what I would do, or what Colleen would do, or what Brian would do in the marketing department. And so, just like other data that you find, the data that goes in is the most important. Right. And so, when I talk to other people in franchise development and things like that, they just hop into Gemini and make something really quick, but they've only ever used it for 5 minutes. Like, that's not going to produce the results that you're looking for from a personal perspective. But sometimes in franchise sales and franchise development, we just got to do what we got to do. And so I'm a big fan of technology to help you get the job done. I'm just not a big fan of technology removing you from the process.
And I think that's the biggest thing. I know Don and I in our conversations, because of Hex growth, obviously, it's like we're not replacing anyone. We're trying to create efficiency, that way you can grow and create structure and spend time doing other things as well, right, in your role. So
I look at AI very similar to the way that franchisees should look at royalties, right? I'm spending a percentage of the money that I have available to have assistance, not to replace what I'm doing, not to make me not part of the process or anything along those lines and not have to work hard, but just to be able to assist me. And if I could ever replace something or an employee or something, just like we look at royalties, right? That royalty, whatever you're paying, should be less expensive than you being able to do it yourself.
Yep.
And it should assist you and provide you with enough kind of resources to get the job done, but not to replace it entirely.
Right. Yeah. And it works 24 hours, right? So the hours that you're unable to work and be available, it's working overnight. It's working, there are people that are up doing things at midnight when normal working individuals are not. So yeah, definitely beneficial. So, and I guess, so speaking of authenticity and the relationships that you have in franchising, why do you think those matter so much? And do you think candidates can tell when they're being quote unquote sold versus the way you typically do it is just helping them and guiding them?
I definitely think they can. I notice it most in like broker leads and things that we'll get. Because they'll bring certain things to my questions and in conversations that are very much so I can tell, oh, you've had this experience with another brand type of a thing. But I think authenticity is something that most of us can recognize it for the most part. I think you can fake it a little bit, right? Like there are certain questions that you could ask or things like that are like, oh, this guy actually cares about me. But where it really kind of, comes to a head for me is remembering. Did we have a conversation? Do I remember what you said? And things along those lines, which is the biggest kind of tell of like, hey, this person was listening, which is an authentic conversation, versus, hey, that guy pretended to listen so that he could get to his next point that he wanted to make about his brand or what have you.
If you were advising an emerging brand preparing to award its first, call it 25 locations, what top 3 things would you tell it to focus on?
Ops first. Make sure that whoever you're putting into the system actually has something to do, and they have a process to follow, and there is a roadmap in front of them. Document everything. So anything that you kind of change throughout your process, any shift that you need to make sure that you've documented that. And third is just build those relationships. Relationships are not a one-way street. Your vendor relationships are just as important as your people relationships. And I would add a bonus one in there is, in today's day and age, like find your automation partners, the ones that are going to be there for you, not just for your own sale. Look at them the same way you would look at a franchisee. Make sure that there are real valuable people maybe even named Don and Monica on the other side of that relationship.
That was actually clear. I was actually very blessed to go to ohDEER's, which it was a national conference, right, Jereme, a couple of years ago, and you had vendor partners there, and you guys were, you can tell that Colleen and her team and you and everyone that I met at the senior leadership level was really taking care of those vendor partner relationships. You weren't mistreating them. You weren't treating them like, hey, get this done for us. You guys were actually treating them like partners. That was very clear that day. I was sitting in the conference room with you guys, listening into the conversation. Like, ohDEER really does do a great job of treating their vendor partners like real partners, which if you're doing that, I can only imagine what the franchisee experience is at ohDEER. I mean, I know you, so I know what it is. If you don't know you, it's a good sort of endorsement that, you know, going back to like, you're saying like if you're going to hire someone, you take them out to lunch and you see how they treat the busboy or they treat the person getting them, like that tells you everything. Like that's what I saw that day in that room. And I'm like, man, ohDEER has this piece right for sure. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Leads me to my final question. Speaking of ohDEER, you know, if there's anyone that's looking to evaluate ohDEER for franchise ownership, what would you recommend or suggest? And then can you just talk a little bit about ohDEER and what that opportunity looks like?
I would say if you're wanting to find out more about ohDEER, Instagram is actually one of the greatest places to start, because then you'll get to see kind of who our owners are, what they do on a daily basis. If you just want to laugh along with an ohDEER owner, ohDEER Central Virginia, by far, one of the funniest owners that we have. And then once you've kind of figured out kind of the day-to-day of what we do, ohDEERfranchising.com will get you more of the, what I call boring information, of, you know, numbers and who to contact and what we are and who we are and things like that. I mean, so ohDEER, we're an all-natural pest control company. We focus on two major things that people may be having an issue with. We do mosquito and tick control, and we do deer and rabbit control. We stick to those two things because we know it works. We know our customer. We do it in an all-natural way. And so we're using minimum risk pesticides because it's better for us. It's better for them. It's better for kids and dogs and all of that stuff. And we typically, you know, like to see community builders as franchisees. It's the most important part of us is that ohDEER is a community partner, just like we view, I don't know if you've kind of caught that theme throughout this, but we look for partnerships everywhere we can. And so if we're not bringing value to the community and that's not necessarily why you're there, then we don't really want to be there.
Yeah, Monica on another call, Monica last week was, sorry, Monica, a little bit on her high horse about selling for another brand that she works for. She was recounting a story where she's telling a franchisee that unless you're going to be out in the community and building your business in the community, like we're not selling you this license. Like it's absolutely critical. So yeah. Well, Jereme, it's hard for me to be impartial because I'm a big fan of yours. As you know, I'm a huge fan of ohDEER. Like I said, I've got to meet with the leadership team. I strongly recommend the brand, especially if that type of service offering is up your alley. I would definitely look at ohDEER. They're a good quality company, good quality leadership team. You're going to only get it straight from Jereme. It's just, I can't say enough great things about the brand.
Thank you, Don.
Jereme.
Thank you, Monica.